Schopenhauer's bill. Aristotle implicitly stated in the Nicomachean Ethics, the goal of the wise is not to seek pleasure, but to be free from suffering. The truth of this statement is based on the fact that all pleasures and happiness are negative in nature, but suffering is positive in nature. This admirable rule of Aristotle teaches us not to make our goal the pleasures and comforts of life, but to avoid life's calamities as much as possible. It is better to write the bill based on the calamities that we have escaped from, not on the basis of the pleasures that we have benefited from. This method is as true as the meaning of Voltaire's saying, "Happiness is nothing more than a dream, but suffering is a reality." If we want to evaluate someone's situation in terms of happiness, we should not look for what makes him happy, but we should ask what makes him sad. Because the smaller the source of sorrow, the happier the person is. Trivial issues cannot be fixed in a storm. When the human body is generally healthy and there is only a small wound or a painful area, we do not feel complete health, but our attention is completely focused on the pain of the injured area, so that our comfort is lost. Also, when everything goes according to our wishes and only one thing is against our will, even though it is not very important, it keeps us busy. We think about it many times and think less about other important things in which we are successful. Schopenhauer does not hide his pessimistic beliefs in any way, but tries to make ordinary people understand that the false happiness that the majority of people seek is worthless, and it is better that they give up empty and transitory pleasures and their only goal is to ward off evil. He sees the life of an ordinary person as a pitiable situation that oscillates between two poles. On one side there is mental suffering, physical pain and need, which a person tries to get rid of, and when he finds relief and reaches freedom, on the other pole, he gets bored and impatient, and to get rid of this suffering, he resorts to any means to forget his emptiness. The similarity of Schopenhauer's thoughts to Buddha's thoughts is obvious. It is noteworthy that the spread of Buddhist ideas and other Indian philosophies in Europe has taken place following the publication of Schopenhauer's works and under his influence. He believes that the person who pessimistically looks at this world as hell and only thinks of finding a mother for himself in this hell far from the fire, is much less wrong. He considers pleasure to be a false hunt that has no external existence, but running after it usually results in a disaster that is completely real. A disaster that manifests itself in the form of pain, suffering, illness, lack, worry, poverty, shame and thousands of other troubles. Schopenhauer was in solidarity with cynicisms who resolutely tried to avoid calamities, and considered pleasures to be illusory things that leave us in the grip of suffering like a deceptive trap. Some historians of philosophy, such as Russell and Will Durant, seek the roots of Schopenhauer's pessimism in his personal life and his wide-ranging conflicts with his mother. Scrutinizing the motivations of a philosopher and judging his motivations based on them will have no result other than moving away from the thought of the thinker. Although Schopenhauer is a pessimistic philosopher, it is interesting that he started to write a book about happiness, and in it he provided practical solutions for avoiding suffering and warding off evil as a guide to the reader. He humbly comes down from the position of his original opinions which he had established in The World as Will and Imagination, and honestly puts himself in the position of an ordinary person who has not achieved a deep insight into the world and considers the value of life only in it, considers the satisfaction of natural desires and wishes, and in this position, it examines the possibilities and prospects of happiness in a certain way. Schopenhauer's philosophy is equipped with a powerful and narrow lens that does not miss even the smallest misfortunes and sufferings of mankind. Finally, a person comes to his senses, sees all this, and then asks himself, what is all this suffering and hardship for? And Schopenhauer's answer is, nothing. Life with all its innumerable pains and hardships, with all its short pleasures and insignificant goals, is completely void and useless, and the highest goal is suffering and only suffering. Happiness is nothing but a good interpretation, and the wise person is the one whose goal is not happiness but to ward off evil. Therefore, in order to be at ease, one should turn away from will, and swim against its direction. But how? Schopenhauer suggests the way of meditation, austerity and art. If an external cause with an internal situation suddenly pulls us out of the endless vortex of carnal desires and frees science from the slavery of the will, our attention will no longer be drawn to carnal temptations but to objects by ignoring their relationship. He will consider them with his desires and will, and in this way he will see them without personal interest and special opinion, but with an objective and real opinion, and he will submit himself to them because his thoughts and imaginations are carnal desires. Did in this way, suddenly the peace that we were always looking for but was running away from us will come to us and will be compatible with us. This is the state free from pain and suffering that Epicurus praises as the absolute good and God-like state, because at this moment we have freed ourselves from the shackles of humiliating servitude, and after 6 days of work and suffering, we have reached the day of rest and relaxation. The aim and practice of art is to free knowledge from the bondage of error and will, to abandon the ego and its material benefits, and to elevate it to the level of intuition of truth. The goal of science is the world with its parts, and the goal of art is the individual in which the world is hidden. Our pleasure in observing nature or poetry or painting depends on viewing it with unquestioning intent and personal moods. In the artist's opinion, the Rhine River is a chain of enchanting landscapes that captivates his imagination and senses with the inspiration of beauty, but a traveler who is busy with his personal affairs sees the Rhine and its two banks as continuous lines that bridges are like. Other lines cut it wide. In this way, the artist is so unaware of himself that, watching the sunset from the palace and prison is the same for him. This observation is devoid of sensual purposes and gives a special grace and beauty to the past and distant and shows it to us with a delightful brilliance. Even if we look at disgusting things regardless of the special feeling or danger resulting from them, their status will be higher. A sad play is beautiful and artistic because it takes us away from individual struggles and forces us to look at our pains and sufferings from a higher perspective. Art relieves the sadness of life because it draws us from the small and ephemeral to the universal and eternal. Spinoza rightly said, "The more the mind sees the eternal view of things, the more it shares in eternity." This power of art in lifting us from this carnal world is more evident in music. Like other arts, music is not a copy of hopes and imaginations or the truth of things, but the copy of the will itself. Music shows the movement, effort and eternal wandering of the will, which finally returns to itself and resumes the effort. For this reason, the effect of music is more penetrating and stronger than other arts, because other arts deal with the shadows of things, and music deals with them.